Good morning. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. Hope everybody's off to a great start. Lovely to have you here for the next 3 hours with Lucas and myself. 615-737-1045. Jump in if you want to. Got a lot of good football conversation to have. No Titans practice today. They are in transit or will be in transit later this afternoon for joint work up in Minnesota the next couple of days, and keep you updated on the latest with all of those things before their next preseason game. But in the interim, we've got starting quarterback news in the AFC South. Now, to my knowledge, no official proclamation was made around C.J. Stroud and that he would be the starting quarterback for the Houston Texans to date.
None has been made yet.
Okay. Well, in the absence of that, the Indianapolis Colts have entered the void, and they put out a tweet this morning from their official account. Now, apparently, they are needing to cite their own head coach, and I guess that's as good a source as any out there, declaring that Anthony Richardson, per Shane Steichen, Anthony Richardson has been named the starter for the regular season. So one preseason game, a sample size that you can go back and forth on. They are up next against the Bears. So I think that's a pretty good case study to kind of see, all right, you saw what Levis and Malik looked like against the Chicago Bears defense in the preseason. Can you hold that up against Richardson, understanding that he's in a different system, he's in a different place in his development than either of those two players, but it might give you at least a good gauge to where those two guys are at right now. Did you watch much of that? I asked you right as the music started playing, and I'm sorry, I got distracted and didn't hear your response. You said you had it on in the background on Saturday?
Yeah, I was monitoring Richardson because doing Titans scoreboards for Titans Radio, that was the only other game that was live at the same time as Titans Bears. So, yes, Richardson's Colts debut was on my laptop as I listened and watched to the Titans preseason game.
In between emergency alert system noises, I heard Bert was playing a cruel joke on Ramon on the morning show yesterday. They would ask, I think he was saying that he would ask, do you guys want to hear some of Ramon on the sideline, and just play the emergency alert system?
Ramon crushed, as always, on the Titans radio sideline.
Yeah, I heard a little
debut.
bit, and I thought that he did a good job. Meanwhile, though, Richardson, just if you were curious, he was 7 of 12 for 67 yards and an interception. Did you see the pick?
Yes.
The step back interception?
Yeah.
I've never seen that before.
Well, what it looked like, it was on his third play as a Colt.
Mm-hmm.
Looked like the nickel blitzed, and he just did not see it coming, and it bamboozled him. It startled him a little bit. I think his brain kind of scrambled, his mechanics, everything kind of went out the door. Throws a pick to Dane Jackson. Otherwise, it was solid.
I liked what I saw.
It was solid from Anthony Richardson.
I could see already, just going back and watching some Florida games in the pre-draft process when there was a potential that Tennessee might stumble into him, should they, not knowing how high he was specifically on their draft board, but just the idea of all the quarterbacks that we talked about, right? And you could already see improvements that they had fleshed out throughout the course of their training camp, and now getting him just more live game experience. He has to play. He has to play more football.
He looked better than Stroud, looked more poised.
I would agree with that as an assessment. And, I know people will make fun of the interception, and I think people are, very quick to jump on the idea of just the interception, right? Whether that's Malik's interception when, it's probably equal parts on Malik as it is Wiley, but it's not, you have to look at the pick and the play itself to determine, okay, how much fault is on the quarterback, how much fault is on the tight end who just didn't catch the pass. You look at Levis's interception. That's a different story, right? Richardson's interception. These are all independent of one another, but I think that people are going to box score scout Anthony Richardson in the preseason and come away saying, 7 of 12 for 67 yards on a pick. Well, he's not near ready enough. And I bet you that the thing that they do better than anybody named Baltimore this year is run the football with Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson in a Shane Steichen scheme. I think that Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Indianapolis this year are teams that I expect to have, that we're talking about at the end of the year, that are I mean, in the top 5 or 10 rushing offenses in football. I think they are going to find a way to get that guy moving on the move early and often, and I think Jonathan Taylor is going to benefit monumentally from that.
I feel like it's going to be a wide-ranging year from Anthony Richardson.
Oh, sure.
There's going to be some really good and some really bad.
There is good. I mean, for all of them. Should Levis play, there's going to be, I mean, there will be really bad. There might be really good.
Sure, but with Richardson, just that athletic ability is going to come out sometimes.
Think about how much Indianapolis would have benefited from a quarterback who could just bail that's not scared Matt Ryan.
Think about how different that offense is going to look from a 70-year-old Matt Ryan to a 20-year-old Anthony Richardson in a Shane Steichen offense. It is going to be night and day in Indianapolis.
I think their offensive line is going to benefit from him just by not having to, like, pure drop back on almost every snap. How many designed runs do you think they had called for Matt Ryan last year?
Oh, 0?
Not a 1. You are correct. That is the correct answer. Not a 1. One would imagine that percentage would increase slightly. They were dropping back as much as any team in football last year. Over 70% of their offensive snaps were just like pure passing dropbacks. You can't win with a quarterback, especially one that's a statue who doesn't, I mean, Matt Ryan was never like overwhelmingly acclaimed for his arm strength, right? They were doing things in Atlanta and even towards the end, like Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones, even the end of Julio Jones, they were helping mask a lot of Matt Ryan, where Matt Ryan had started to tail off. It's natural. He's in his mid-30s. These things happen to quarterbacks. Arm strength, athletic ability, how willing they are to take a hit. Tom Brady. Tom Brady's time to throw last year should be completely eliminated from next-gen stats because half the time he was just bailing. These are things that are a product of quarterback's age, and I think that whatever Anthony Richardson looks like, do we not feel that they are a better football team, or at least better equipped as a football team with this version of Anthony Richardson, raw though he may be, than whatever last year's Matt Ryan was? I feel vastly more confident, especially because of the coaching staff.
Will be more fun to watch, I imagine. Trippin' Titans on the F&M Bank chat says, we're going to ruin Anthony Richardson.
Who's going to ruin Anthony Richardson?
I imagine he's talking about the Titans in Week 5.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm sure plenty of defenses are going to get him this year. And I'm sure, there's going to be moments like, you remember Week 1 heading into Arizona coming here? It was the first time they'd opened at home in a while. For, what was that, the 2021 season, I think, is when Kyler Murray and Chandler Jones and DeAndre Hopkins just diced him up, right? And the whole conversation was, he's too short. He can't see over Danico Autry and Jeff Simmons and Harold Landry and Bud Dupree. And he put them on skates in several different moments. Anthony Richardson has that ability, except he's huge. He's a giant.
I forgot Jim Bob Cooter is the offensive coordinator up there.
I think it's going to be my confidence, and I'm not my confidence that they will be an improved football team on the whole. Like maybe they end up being a 4 or 5 win football team again, but I think my confidence in them this year, if I was to assign confidence anywhere in the Indianapolis Colts, is because of the coaching staff that they have with the skill set of the player that they've just drafted at quarterback. Because, I mean, was their offensive line not one of the most underwhelming units across any in professional football? Like, if you assign, wide receiver, like the Titans wide receiver core comes to mind. The Colts offensive line, given who they had up there and what guys like Quentin Nelson are making and Braden Smith, they were one of the most underperforming units in football. I have to assume that there's going to be some kind of regression to the mean there. You go back and watch them, and I was listening to Nate Tice kind of break down the film, particularly of their rushing attack, Nate Tice of The Athletic, and I thought what he pointed out, given the context of him breaking down the film and then going back and watching some snaps, you could visibly see that the Colts offensive line wasn't executing at the same level that you're accustomed to, right? They just weren't as sharp. They weren't in tune. They weren't as dialed in as you felt like that group had been over the last couple of years. And again, there's depreciation with offensive line the same way there is with defensive players. It's super violent. Injuries pile up. But I think that while it's announced today, I mean, we really knew that he was going to be the starter, the day after the draft, the day after the first round of the NFL draft, where Jim Irsay is saying, yeah, he's going to start this year. You knew as soon as Irsay said it, this is just the head coach, getting to make his official announcement.
Richardson will see the Jaguars, Texans, Ravens, and Rams defense before the Titans.
Jaguars, Texans, Ravens, and Rams. Jags defense objectively bad last year. Especially, I'm curious to see what they look like getting after quarterbacks without Arden Key. I'm sure not just the ability of Arden Key, but the way that Jacksonville was deploying him last year, I'm sure that's what caught Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon's eye in free agency.
They really need Trayvon Walker to take a jump.
Buddy, I mean, by percentage, he's nothing but a middling defensive lineman in his rookie year.
Especially when you look at what Aiden Hutchinson did in his rookie year.
The very next pick.
Yeah, the pick after Walker.
Music City Malik says, why are you giving the Colts any benefit of the doubt? Dumpster juice franchise. Oh, it's entirely possible that the ownership, that ownership meddles and things go awry and Jonathan Taylor holds out. Or the more likely scenarios is the running back falls in line. The owner's just happy to see a new quarterback out there and has something to sell tickets. Right now, there's legitimate excitement in Indianapolis. Maybe there was previously, but now the idea of Anthony Richardson, Jonathan Taylor, Shane Steichen, and a run game that can operate as their primary means of offense and trying to get a complementary passing game off of it. I think that's enough to sell tickets to get people inside Lucas Oil. He's just trying to generate excitement. Now, if it goes south, maybe he starts to get involved, but it's not like he's not gonna Jeff Saturday Shane Steichen, right? He can't hire somebody else off television to come in and be the Colts head coach for the basically 2/3 of the season. The things that went wrong there. Now, maybe they fire Chris Ballard if stuff goes awry. But, I mean, is that really going to impact how Indianapolis manages next year? I'm sure that can add additional pressure. It can create discontent, I suppose. And I'm not saying they're a well-run franchise. In fact, I think this offseason and last season, along with Jim Irsay's eccentricities, would indicate the latter. And in fact, it's been covered up by pretty good quarterback play over the better part of 2 decades. But I do think that there's reasons to be optimistic about Richardson. I think there's reasons to be optimistic about Stroud. This division, which is made out to be one of the worst in the league, it's just there's a lot of promise there, and it comes from the most important position. So I think it's okay to be optimistic about that as a football fan. I know you're Titans fans, and you hate the Colts, and you hate the Texans, and you hate the Jags. I'm just saying, as somebody who's going to get to watch them play your team twice a year, I'm very intrigued by what they're doing. 615-737-1045 is the number. We would be happy to have you join the conversation at any point. The AP Top 25 came out yesterday, and we talked about where Tennessee came in at number 12, who they were sandwiched by in the first preseason or the first official AP Top 25 preseason rankings. There's a couple of stories that I think are worth branching out there, and also something that we didn't talk about, which is Peyton Manning going back to Knoxville to be a professor. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back on this match day. Happy match day to those of you who celebrate. Nashville SC continuing their Leagues Cup journey tonight. Lucas is on the call. Former Titans punter Brett Kern is going to join us later on in the show after him and his son get off the golf course. Talk a little bit of Nashville SC. Bud, you fired up for that tonight?
I am fired up.
You got to be.
Going to be an electric environment once again. Hopefully not as quite as chaotic as it was against Club America 1 week ago today, but Monterrey will bring a massive contingent and will be Nashville's biggest challenge to date in this Leagues Cup.
So you can hear that later this evening.
8:30 kickoff.
8:30 p.m.?
Yep.
Right here on 104.5 The Zone. I'm going to try go. We're going to get done with prime time early enough that I think I can sneak out there. So hopefully, if they're winning while I'm still in transit, and when I show up and they, something disastrous happens and they lose, then I'm not blamed.
We shall see. I think you give yourself too much credit.
But Corey Curtis texts me every day, every time that they have a home game, and asks me, "Are you going? My daughter wants to know. She knows you have this losing streak."
No, stop. Stop adding to Buck's hubris, thinking that he has an impact on games because of his presence.
It's not a hubris. I want to go. I don't want people to be mad. I want to see a win. Contrary to popular belief, I like going to these things. Like I really do. And every time I do, they lose. And not like lose, but lose terribly.
Well, the stakes are high in this one. So if you are that worried about and you actually think that you bring a curse, maybe you should stay away because the stakes are awfully high. A win doesn't just put you in the final. A win automatically qualifies you for CONCACAF Champions League in 2024.
Right, the stakes are huge.
Huge, yeah, very high. This is as big an opportunity as Nashville SC has faced as a professional club.
8:30 kickoff right here on The Zone. You can hear Lucas Panzica on the call. Meanwhile, I mentioned that we were going to dive back into some AP Top 25 stuff and also where Joe Milton ranks in the college football, ESPN's college football top 100, the top 100 players in the sport this year. Lucas is going to have me guess that here in just a second. But Tennessee at 12, we talked about it. I felt personally, and I think, Lucas, you might have felt the same. I don't want to speak for you, but 12 feels appropriate given the turnover, given the lack of proven commodities on Tennessee's roster that have high expectations. It's a deep roster. Probably trust Josh Heupel at this point heading into year 3 of his tenure. And now we start to have the discussion of program versus was it last year's team, or is this now something that this program is going to be able to sustain? And, a lot of that will be decided over the course of the next 4 to 5 months once they start to play games. But beyond that, looking through the top 25, I didn't necessarily have a strong feeling, right, about anything that was there that was worth disputing. Nothing necessarily that invoked a strong opinion about, this team got slighted in the preseason or this team is way too high relative to expectation. I think that based on everything that we know about these teams heading into the season, that it felt just about right. Were you surprised that Alabama was 4th? Do you feel that is accurate and maybe even too high, given the quarterback uncertainty there?
No. And part of my reaction to these things is that while it's fun to talk about, it's also completely meaningless. And when you look at preseason AP polls versus even midseason AP polls, or when that first college football playoff ranking comes out, it's night and day, right? Notre Dame was the number 5 team in the country in the preseason a year ago.
And then did they drop their opener?
They
lost to Marshall.
Lost to Marshall. Yeah, rough start to the Marcus Freeman era. And then they bounced back pretty well, routed Clemson at home and beating South Carolina in the bowl game and all these things. But just understanding how largely meaningless the preseason AP poll is, I will not have any strong feelings about any of these rankings. But yes, Alabama should absolutely be considered to be one of the 4 best teams in college football going into the season. I know they don't know who their starting quarterback is, but I don't know of any team in college football history that has earned benefit of the doubt more than Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Again, I know these things don't mean anything, but you know what made me laugh? That Iowa's in this.
Where are they?
25.
Oh, that's amazing. That is amazing that they are the preseason number 25 team in the country, because what is the benchmark that Brian Ferentz in his new contract as the offensive coordinator at Iowa in points per game?
Oh, is it 25?
It's 25. They put that in his contract that Iowa needs to score 25 or more points per game this season. Something that, I looked at and I had never seen that before, but, I understand I haven't been covering college football as long as a lot of people, but it was very gratifying seeing the college football media world, people that have covered this for decades, saying, I have never heard of that before. A clause in a contract saying you better score 25 or more points per game or you're out of here, Brian Ferentz.
His son is still the coordinator.
Kirk Ferentz, yes.
Brian Ferentz.
Brian Ferentz is the offensive coordinator.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You're saying it's in Brian Ferentz's contract.
Yes, the offensive coordinator. Kirk Ferentz is the head coach, his father. They do have a transfer quarterback, Cade McNamara, former Michigan quarterback, now at Iowa. Defense figures to be as good as always.
Yeah.
But
higher scoring than the offense.
Iowa is going to be so much fun to follow this year, just for that, just for us to keep track of those benchmarks that we know to be in Brian Ferentz's contract. 25 points per game. I mean, you're talking about yards per game. It is all laid out, and it is a low bar, buddy. Let me tell you what they put in that guy's contract. Very low bar for what college football offenses are doing nowadays.
So speaking of what college football offenses are doing nowadays, Tennessee. Joe Milton figures to be one of the most pivotal figures in college football this year, rightly or wrongly, because either he makes progress as a sixth-year college player and operates this offense, even if he's not Hendon Hooker, if he's functional, if he's manageable, their floor should be 9 games. Joe Milton apparently is in the ESPN Top 100 College Football Players of 2023. You want me to guess where he's at?
Yeah. Where do you think Joe Milton? Ryan McGee is the one who put this out. ESPN
So
does this. Preseason top 100 players in college football going into the 2023 season. Like, for context, Caleb Williams, number 1. I'll go ahead and tell you that. Brock Bowers, number 2. So with that information, where do you think Joe Milton would land in the top 100 going into 2023?
Can I just ask, is there any criteria? Is this just based off the talent of the player? That's the criteria that McGee has stacked these guys.
Yeah, the talent of the player, what we know about the player, past production, all of it. It's not a perfect formula.
I bet Joe Milton, he's 45.
76.
Whoa.
76 on this list put out by ESPN's Ryan McGee.
Okay. Now, McGee has more insight to that program than most, notably a University of Tennessee alum, somebody who has covered college football for a great deal of time, does the show with Marty Smith on ESPN, where they're on campuses each and every weekend on Saturdays doing their radio show.
Now, worth noting, this was not Ryan just sitting down and putting together 100 players. He's the one that put it out, but the methodology of this was voters that work in ESPN's college football department were presented with a series of one-on-one votes, like who should be ranked higher going into the 2023 season, Blake Corum or Caleb Williams? Blake Corum, the running back out of Michigan, who was in the top 10 of this, or Caleb Williams, who ends up number 1. So McGee puts it as an Oklahoma drill of statistical reasoning. More than 10,000 votes later, these are the results.
So is there an explanation about why Milton is where he is?
It just kind of lays out what he did last year, sitting behind Hooker, coming in the Orange Bowl. Pretty statistical.
People are, and I don't agree with this as an assessment because I don't think they're similar players. But in college football, like Anthony Richardson, not necessarily outright willing his team last year at Florida to wins, right? Ended up being a first-round pick anyway. But in the world of college football, like, there were moments when Anthony Richardson wasn't enough to get it done. Now, Milton is drawing some of those comparisons because of size, because of arm strength, when they're not the same kind of athlete, I don't think, at all. But I'm looking at Joe Milton and saying, all right, is he going to be the thing Is he capable of that? The thing that Anthony Richardson was not last year in college football.
He was at times.
At times.
The only reason Florida beat Utah, the only reason Florida was in the game at Neyland Stadium last year.
And made it a game against Tennessee late at the end, obviously. Like, there were moments, and the receiver situation at Florida, the more that I go back and watch Anthony Richardson in college, the better I feel about him because of how poor the skill position talent was last year around him. But I think with Joe Milton, is it going to be Milton, the talent of Milton, that gives Tennessee a chance to do the things like Anthony Richardson did, or that the best quarterbacks in college football can do, which is go out there and try and win you a game? Is Milton himself capable of that, or is the scheme going to be the thing that's more relied upon? That's my big question with them.
Well, Milton needs to be able to execute it, which he wasn't able to early in 2021. Hooker slipped right in, and the rest was history for the next 2 years.
But that's not Anthony Richardson, and you want them to play within the structure, right? You want them to play within the structure of the offense, but that's not Anthony Richardson's gifts coming in a big spot. That's him reining himself in a little bit and being a more disciplined player within the system.
Yeah, Joe Milton needs to play within the Tennessee system. Yeah, but it's his talents that are going to take Tennessee to the heights that they saw last year. The infrastructure around Joe Milton this year, I've said this, are better than they were around Hendon Hooker a year ago. And that includes the defensive side. He's not on the field with those guys, but what that can do for this Tennessee offense in putting them back on the field quicker and taking another step, because Tennessee's defense had struggles last year, yes, but it was a step forward under Tim Banks, the defensive coordinator. Tennessee is far deeper on the defensive side of the ball, especially at the linebacker position and in the secondary, that will allow this Tennessee offense more breathing room and just more opportunities to put points on the board. Milton has to work within the system. You don't worry about the wide receivers.
No.
You just don't. I mean,
not in this offense.
And he has this unique opportunity to just, yes, he's stepping in and finally taking the reins from Hendon Hooker, but he's already got the chemistry down with Squirrel White, with Ramel Keaton, with Brew McCoy, who he played with in the Orange Bowl. Dante Thornton, I imagine that's been a process, the Oregon transfer throughout the course of fall camp. But that was one thing when I asked Joe at SEC Media Days, he felt like he is ahead in that regard. The timing, the chemistry with those guys, not an issue going into 2023. They've got that part down. So they're working on things mechanically and install and everything that you do during fall camp. But he is ahead of the curve compared to the majority of quarterbacks taking the reins for the first time. So, yes, you have to work within the system, but ultimately it's his talents that will kind of take Tennessee to that next level. And the X factor for me in all of this is how they use Joe Milton as a runner, which they did not really utilize in the Orange Bowl or in the Vanderbilt game. They didn't need to. But with what appears to be a competent solution at backup quarterback in Nico Iamaleava, this staff continues to talk about how quickly he's developing, not making the same mistake twice, et cetera, et cetera. How much do they trust Joe Milton to use his athletic ability the way they did Hendon Hooker? Because they're very different runners. Milton a bit more of a freight train than Hooker, who was savvy runner, right? It reminds you of how Josh Dobbs ran the ball at Tennessee when he was playing quarterback for the Vols. That for me is the X factor in Joe Milton's 2023 with Tennessee.
Do they let him have the freedom? Do they let them? And it may be specific to the player. Like Hendon Hooker may have more freedom than Joe Milton does to like freelance. You know what I'm saying? Like I remember asking Vrabel this about Jadeveon Clowney and the idea of like freelancing on defense a little bit. And Vrabel said, well, yeah, we want them to go out there and make a play. Like if they are capable of making a play, then yes, structure be damned, go make the play, but you better be right. Offensively, those are not, it's a lot more rigid, even at college, but the ability to utilize their legs, like is he restricted specifically to designed runs, or is he going to have the freedom? Has he earned the freedom? These are questions that I don't have the answer to. I'm just curious about it. Does he have the freedom to pick it up and go when he feels like he can? Does he have the recognition? Do they feel like he's far enough along in where he needs to be with what it is that the offense allows for him to do? And then what beyond what the offense allows for him to do, can he produce? That I think is the biggest question to about Joe Milton because, like, in the scheme of the college football playoff chase this year, I think we're probably more reasonable in our expectation. Last year it felt like they had a better shot last year, even in the early going, even in the preseason, when we didn't necessarily expect Tennessee to reach the heights that they ultimately ended up doing. Because of Hendon Hooker, I felt better about them trying to make a playoff push. Milton, I think, is as important as any player in college football this year who can impact the college football rate. I think Spencer Rattler is up there as well. I'm not arguing for South Carolina to be a college football playoff contender, but I'm looking at all the players in the scope of college football, the teams that they're up against, the opportunities that they have, the development that they saw from year over year, and I'm saying Joe Milton, and I'm looking at Joe Milton and thinking, okay, if Tennessee is a better roster, theoretically, this year, and Joe Milton is kind of the anomaly here, that is a playoff contending team.
I would take Spencer Rattler out of that and replace him with Quinn Ewers.
Quinn Ewers and what's going on at Texas with Arch Manning, where apparently Arch Manning is making more of a push.
Okay, but why do you say that?
Based on the update that I sent you earlier.
You sent me an article from Bleacher Report that another Big 12 coach said he could see Arch Manning usurping Quinn Ewers, right? Paraphrasing, in 2023.
Now, it's more speculative than like outright reporting on it, but I don't think that Arch Manning is like, it feels like Nico is going to sit this year.
Mm-hmm. This is Joe's team.
Do we feel that way about Quinn Ewers? Now I'm further even removed from Texas than I am Tennessee, right? But I don't feel the same confidence. I don't read the same things. Like Pate does really well to cite the people who cover these teams on a much more hyper-focused level for 247, and I really find like that's the place that I feel like I get the best information, beyond preview magazines and things like that. And, just based off of reading articles and seeing the coverage out of there, it doesn't necessarily feel as concrete that this is Quinn Ewers' team. Am I misreading that situation?
I wouldn't say so. I mean, I'm not down there, so we don't have as good of a read on that situation, and it's tough to do this just from spring game takeaways, but that's what we have. That is what we have. The setting we have seen Arch Manning in was the spring game. It didn't look good. We have to remember the type of competition Arch Manning was playing at Newman High School. It wasn't good.
Mm-hmm.
Very low, bottom of the barrel when it comes to, the upper tier of Southeastern high school football. So I think it would take a lot. It would really take a lot for Quinn Ewers to spiral, for Arch Manning to finally be called up, but we're not down there at fall camp. I do know that the sky's the limit for Texas with what they have on the outside and just the depth of this roster with Steve Sarkisian. Week 2 at Alabama. I mean, maybe that will sort of set the tone for what Texas's season looks like. But
Alabama.
I think it would take a lot. Yeah, same goes for Alabama.
615-737-1045. What in sports made you say, oh no? It's coming up next. Welcome back to the show. Titans, former Titans punter Brett Kern. I still do it. I still do it with Brett. I still do it with Ben. Every time I talk about him coming on the show, I still say Titans punter, Titans center. Either way, former Titans punter, legend, retired. Now, coming from the golf course to hang out with us and talk a little soccer, Brett Kern going to be here in the next segment, so look forward to that. I know people always enjoy hearing from the MV punter. Meanwhile, going to need some music for Oh No.
Oh no! Oh no!
Oh no!
Oh no!
Oh no!
Oh, no.
Oh yeah!
615-737-1045. What in sports made you say, oh no, this weekend? Are we about to dedicate an entire segment to the blind side?
I guess so.
I think so.
That's the most appropriate thing to do, I think.
So this happened right before Peter Skoronsky came on with us at about 12:15 yesterday. You know the story at this point. Famously, a Baltimore Raven, a short time with the Tennessee Titans at the end of his career. The subject of The Blind Side, Michael Orr, played tackle at Ole Miss. They had the old Oscar-winning movie about the blind, or the Oscar-winning story of Michael Orr and his childhood and his quote-unquote adopted family who helped bring him out of, basically depravity and poverty to turn him into a high caliber offensive lineman who went on to become a stud left tackle for the Baltimore Ravens, won a Super Bowl, and then had this award-winning story all about it. So now he's saying that he has recently found out that this family didn't actually adopt him. In fact, he's been Britney Spears'd. He was placed into a conservatorship, according to a court filing yesterday. So this is the quote. The lie of Michael's adoption is one upon which co-conservators Leanne Toohey and Sean Toohey have enriched themselves at the expense of their ward, the undersigned Michael Orr. And that is courtesy of the petition to terminate the conservatorship in Shelby County Court. So, shocking. I say this tongue-in-cheek, and we'll see what happens with the lawsuit itself, but, shocking to nobody that a couple from Mississippi who made their riches off Taco Bell franchises is out here taking advantage of somebody like Michael Orr for money. That was the first thing that jumped off the screen to me.
I mean, his allegation is that they basically told him when he was a teenager, it's the same thing, right?
Same thing.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what a conservatorship was until Amanda Bynes here recently and Britney Spears. Apparently these things are more common than I realized, but I mean, this whole situation, apparently the Tooheys negotiated a deal with 20th Century Fox, the production company that made The Blind Side, that left Orr without any payment for the rights to his name, likeness, and so any rights to the name, likeness, and life story. The Toohey family received a contract price of $225,000 and 2.5% of the film's net proceeds. It grossed over $300 million. So all of those figures add up to one big old lawsuit for Big Mike of The Blind Side. That is the thing that made me say, oh no, this week.
Did you like that movie when it came out? Did you go see it in theaters?
I did see it in theaters.
It was very popular in this part of the country.
It was, yeah. I mean, it was fine. I didn't dislike it. I thought it was a cool story. That honestly is the thing that I come away most with is, man, that sucks. That really, really sucks. I already think that college football and college athletics just generally, whether it's basketball or football, I largely think it's a broken enterprise and one of the most corrupt institutions that any of us have ever seen.
By the way, watching the Johnny Manziel doc will reinforce that for you.
Reaffirm that.
When you truly see just how much Texas A&M as an institution benefited from Johnny Manziel, and he was not technically allowed to get a dime of that. It is insane. I mean, Johnny is an extreme example.
Yeah. But here lies before us another extreme. So it reaffirms my belief that college football and college athletics and the way that people take advantage of athletes is disgusting. And so that really is at the core of my, I know we make jokes and the reaction yesterday was to laugh about it, but yeah, ultimately at the core of it is just, that's rotten. It's a fairy tale. Somebody came up with a fairy tale. And at the end of the fairy tale is a human being who's looking around, who's probably, with football and the extent of his football career and the position that he played, probably has considerable health expenses that he has to continue to consider throughout the course of the rest of his life, and that money would benefit him a great deal. I hate it.
And he's always spoken out a little bit against the movie because of how it sort of portrayed him as just a big, slow offensive lineman, right?
Somebody who had never seen a bed before.
Like mentally slow,
yes.
Though, right? He talked about how that affected him talking to general managers. Like it kind of it framed the way people thought of him as a person just by watching that movie.
They Forrest Gumped him.
Yeah, pretty much. So if they had legally adopted him, he would have retained the power to handle his own financial affairs. But because it was a conservatorship, he basically surrendered that authority to the family, and that's what he's fighting now. So it does stink to see it. I think people liked the movie. It was a well-done movie, but I think people loved seeing Nick Saban kind of putting the LSU garb back on, because that movie came out when Saban was the head coach at Alabama, but he went back to play himself as the head coach at LSU. Philip Fulmer in that movie. Ed Orgeron played himself in that movie as the head coach at Ole Miss. So I do think people the folks in the South and SEC fans like that movie just because of that. I mean, you had a heavy SEC influence in that film.
I'm going to take a phone call, and Lucas, would you mind if I sent you down to the front door to go get Brett Kern while I take this phone call?
No, Brett can scale the facade.
Okay, 615-737-1045. Levi in Watertown is next. Hey, Levi.
Hey guys, hey, you kind of took mine, but I got another one for you guys. My no for the weekend is the rookie Saints kicker not being able to come in from the security guards, and then goes in and wins the game-winning field goal, and then after he wins the field goal, then the security stops him again, and he's like, "Hey man, I just won the kick. I just won the game with this game-winning field goal, and y'all still don't recognize who I am?"
Yeah, the fact that it happened before and after is pretty bad.
Blake Groupie, who hit the game winner. Took my dumbest thing in sports this week, Levi.
Brett Kern is next.
It is 11 o'clock. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. It is a travel day for the Tennessee Titans. They head up to Minnesota, where they will begin joint practice against the Vikings tomorrow and Thursday ahead of Saturday's preseason matchup. Mike Vrabel spoke Sunday on why it was that he wanted to practice with Minnesota.
I think that they got good skill players. I think that's something that can help us. I think defensively, the multiple, with B-Flow, Kirk's always done a fantastic job at the end of the game, situationally. And so I felt like just a lot of those factors that, could help us. We do all those things. We do those situations, and, I thought it'd be a great opportunity for us.
The team officially signed defensive lineman Kyle Pecco and running back Jaquez Patrick on Monday, placing defensive lineman Shaquille Brown on injured reserve. Defensive back Josh Thompson activated from the PUP list, while defensive back Chris Jackson was waived. In NFL news, the New York Jets are signing free agent running back Dalvin Cook on a one-year deal worth up to $8.6 million. Cook, not the only free agent running back to find a landing spot Monday. Ezekiel Elliott signing with the Patriots on a one-year deal worth up to $6 million. In the AFC South, Shane Steichen made it official in Indianapolis. Anthony Richardson is the Colts starter moving forward. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
What's happening? Hour number 2 underway. We're happy to have you here on 104.5 The Zone. We are also pleased to have a little bonus Kern. We got not just Brett Kern in the house, but we also have broadcaster extraordinaire Bryce Kern, who probably has more reps on a microphone than anybody in the room. What's happening, boys?
What's going on?
It's good to see you.
Good to see you, too. Looking good.
Well, I'm telling you, the glow up, the retirement glow up for you, my friend.
Yeah. You either go up or you go down, and thankfully I've gone down. So,
well, in terms of weight.
Correct.
Yeah.
Pickleball, I'm telling you, I made fun of pickleball for a long time, and then I started playing it, and it's a real deal.
Bryce, are you out there with your dad? Are you on the pickleball courts as well?
Oh, no. All he told me was that he slammed his pickleball racket 5 times because he was so mad.
All right.
No, wait.
Lucas, turn the mic off. Turn the mic off.
Hit the dump button. Hit the dump button.
Well, listen, it's good. It's good to know that the competitive spirit lives on the pickleball courts.
Yes, it does.
You guys just came off the golf course this morning.
It's a quick 9 holes.
Beautiful morning for it.
It is. I tell you what, the last couple of days have been sticky. And we went down to the FedEx on Sunday.
Yeah.
And Memphis is a different kind of sticky as well. So to wake up this morning, go outside, we teed off about, 8:30? And it felt very refreshing. So it's coming.
Yeah. Soon enough. Well, in the meantime, we got some soccer coming up. Now, obviously, to bring a former Titans punter in here and pivot to soccer, you've been our Masters analyst in previous years.
That's true, yeah.
You are now the show's soccer analyst. Are you comfortable with that title?
Is that a new title you just gave me?
Well, I've taken it from Lucas, who is the play-by-play voice for the soccer team, and given it to you for no other reason.
How did that go the other night?
Lucas.
The Minnesota game?
Yeah.
A lot of goals.
That was a lot. I mean,
a lot of goals.
Red card in the 34th minute definitely
helped
that cause.
But they took full advantage. Largest margin of victory in the club's history, 5-0 in the
That was
quarterfinal.
a great game to go to.
Well, you have taken to now texting me. Every time you go to a soccer game to troll me for the fact that I go to these games and teams lose.
What did I text you during the Titans game?
Well, a variety of different things, but one of them was 5-0 or 5-0 win with you in attendance and me in Chicago.
Yeah,
and you had texted me asking if I was going to confirm that you could then go to see the team win.
Yeah, when I figured out that because I kind of forgot about the Titans game on Saturday, that it was a noon start.
Yeah,
and I knew that you'd be gone. But I just wanted to confirm, double check, and once I knew you were going to Chicago, I confirmed the tickets and we went.
You know how disrespectful it is. It's not just people
just
text me now saying, "Are you going to this game? Can I and my child go and enjoy a game together without the fear of seeing this loss just because you're in attendance?"
do you know how long people texted me from Denver saying that I had a curse in some way, shape, or form because they cut me when they were 6-0, and then after I left, they went 2-8.
Yeah,
right.
That's probably a little more. You probably have a little more to do with the impact on the field than I do. Just this curse in theory. I'm not calling it a curse.
It's theory.
It's theory.
It's a conspiracy theory. That's fun to run with. That's all. I enjoy it.
Well, thank you. I
know how it feels. I know how it feels. Trust me.
I appreciate that your dad in retirement is taking to trolling me, Bryce.
The soccer curse of Buck Rising. It could be a thing.
It could be a thing. Well, hopefully it's not a thing tonight. I have not yet gotten the tickets. I want to make sure that I can go. I'm going to try and scoop some
late
last
one
minute.
Tonight. Late start.
Well, it works out better for me because I have the primetime show, the streaming show tonight for A to Z. But you have been a day one Nashville SC proponent. I know you really enjoy, both of you guys and your family enjoy going to the games on a regular basis. The run that they've been on in this League Cup, I don't know enough to whether to be surprised by it or not. It's just been cool to see high-level competitive soccer at Geodis Park and them continue to have the opportunity to win this thing, potentially play Messi here in Nashville. Like the opportunities are endless, and I know that you've been along for the ride the whole time.
Yeah, it's it's been really fun to see. Being able to, we went to our first game, the Minnesota game the other night, and that's the first time we went, and just to see how they played and how well they played and how dangerous they are. They're fast. I mean, fast on the wings, and I guess the thing that we kind of sat in front of their bench, but more or less, where a lot of those guys warm up, and seeing that the talent that they have coming off the bench. Is you got Fafa and Surge coming off the bench, in the 65th, 70th minute, and that's not, when you got Mukhtar out there and Teal, like you're subbing Teal for a guy that played, over in England. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot coming at you, and obviously it helps, when you're up a man and the attack can be kind of relentless. But just to see what they're doing, that Club America game was insane. In Monterrey, they're a good squad. I know they just started their league. MLS is way ahead of where they're at in Mexico, but it's a good club, and they went out, beat LAFC, which is probably about on par with where Nashville is, this year in the standings. So it's going to be a great match. There's kind of a lot on the line too. You finish in that top three, that's pretty special.
So where do you guys stand on a potential final matchup? Obviously, you want Nashville to beat Monterrey tonight, right, and then you face either Philadelphia Union on the road
in Philly, right,
or you host Inter Miami and Lionel Messi. So I know the appeal of seeing Messi in Music City is insane. It's one of those things that is unfathomable, right? Even a year ago, you would have said, well, that'll just something that would never, ever happen. But where do you stand on that? Would you rather avoid Messi for a better opportunity to win Leagues Cup, theoretically, and going up to Philly, which would obviously still be a big challenge? Or are you saying, no, I want Lionel Messi in Nashville, Tennessee?
Well, Bryce, what did we book about a month ago? Where are we going at the end of the month?
We're going down to Inter Miami to see Messi.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
You're going?
We're going.
That's
and
awesome.
So we're, I figured
awesome,
that's a lot cheaper of a trip than to hop over to France and watch PSG and Messi play.
That's so awesome.
So we're kind of.
He's made it a little easier on you.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn because here I is. I booked these flights, got tickets, hotel, all that kind of stuff to go down real quick. And then now the opportunity that Messi might be coming up here, maybe we'll just double dip. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, but the opportunity to win the Leagues Cup would be amazing.
Crazy.
He doesn't want them to play Messi. Lucas does not, because it runs exactly parallel with the Titans preseason game in Minnesota, and he has post-game obligations now. So instead of getting to call that game with Nashville SC, this hypothetical scenario,
okay,
with Nashville SC and Messi here at Geodis Park, he would be doing Titans Vikings preseason.
I want Nashville to win Leagues Cup, right? I want what's best for
Are you
Nashville
sure?
Soccer
But I'm
Club.
saying the opportunity to be able to call a game and just say Messi's name.
Right. And even and I'll be doing the Miami game, which will be awesome. But even besides the opportunity of working it, I will say to not be able to be there in person in any capacity with Messi playing at Geodis Park would pain me greatly. That would hurt. But I want Nashville Soccer Club to have whatever the best opportunity is to win League's Cup and make history for this club.
I agree.
At the top of North American soccer. So whatever gives them the best chance to do that is what I want. But yes, it would physically pain me to not be able to be there if Messi were to come to Geodis Park.
I think it stings because it's a preseason game.
Yeah, that's the thing.
It's not like they're playing. It's not like they're playing. The Bengals game when they come to town, or
it's because Nick Mullins will be playing in
by
the
home
first
open,
quarter.
Nick Mullins. Respectfully, there's not a comedically better name that you could have pulled. Respectfully to Nick Mullins, but it's so crazy to see Messi in MLS. Like, I know it's been the better part of a month now.
Right.
But the idea that this is a thing and that he's out there playing on a regular basis and that they are infinitely better now for obvious reasons than they were prior to his acquisition. Like, are you blown away by that the way that I think a lot of American soccer fans are?
I think so. I mean, you kind of saw it a little bit when Schweinsteiger came over from Germany, and Gareth Bale a little bit. Last year.
You've seen it in bits and pieces.
You've seen it, but a
Not
name
this,
like Messi,
though.
especially when guys like Sané and Ronaldo, I think Neymar he just did the 99 mil, right?
Yep, headed to Saudi Arabia.
Going over to Saudi Arabia, right? So they're going for live golf, right? I mean, they're going where the money is.
Yeah.
And so, but then you got Messi, which he's getting the money in a different way, right? Probably, I would assume so. But for him, he gets an opportunity to come back, to Miami, which is a lot probably more like what he's used to.
Better for the wife and kids.
Better for the wife and kids, closer to home per se, right? I mean, you're still a good flight away, but compared to going to Saudi Arabia, I mean, I really had no idea. I don't know much about Saudi Arabia soccer, and so I was looking like, all right, where do these guys play?
I
mean,
don't
the
think
city's
they
in the
do either. I think they're just throwing bags and figuring out the rest.
I mean, I looked up where. I mean, this city that they play, and I can't even pronounce it, is in the middle of the desert in Saudi Arabia, and I'm thinking, man, that's just Messi gets to come back to Miami. He gets to be the stud, the star. I think it's great, and I think it's great for MLS too.
Well, it's great for MLS and for Apple. Like, for Messi to essentially be a partner, not with MLS, but with Apple in this, in growing the league and the television package or the streaming package, I guess, that they've put together on top of all that. It's such a cool moment to see. I don't know, how pivotal it'll be in terms of the American sports consciousness with the sport of soccer. It feels like soccer's been kind of a thing that people have gone back and forth on in terms of how actively engaged are American sports fans in soccer, and then beyond that, MLS, right? The soccer that's being played here at home. I just think it's such a cool thing to see and such an electric addition that creates an atmosphere and excitement, and obviously will bring additional international eyeballs to what it is that MLS is doing, which is, understandably a lower level of soccer. But I mean, I'm very much enjoying the level of play that I've seen through, what is this now, Lucas? 3 years in MLS?
This is year 4 for Nashville.
Year 4.
Yeah.
And this is all Messi and MLS is a big factor. It's all in the build-up to the U.S. hosting the 2026 World Cup.
Correct.
Like, this is all a part of that build-up. There's going to be a pre-Messi era in MLS and a post-Messi era, like there was with David Beckham, who changed everything when he came here in 2007. But this is all just part of that ascension to the 2026 World Cup hosted in North America.
Well, I mean, I think too, Messi coming over and getting what he's gotten, whether through Apple and, part of the ownership, stake in the ownership, I think that allows, because, I mean, the money over in Europe, I mean, that's good money. I mean, you just saw what Harry Kane did, going from Tottenham to Bayern Munich. And, I mean, that's a lot of money, which the MLS can't provide, right? But I think when you get Messi over and you start getting the viewership and you start building up, kind of the net worth of the MLS, you're going to be able to start getting guys from Europe. Because, I mean, really, that's what you want. You want to be able to create a league that can compete with, La Liga and, that's a lot to say, Bundesliga and all that kind of stuff. But, that's what you want. When you get guys like Messi and guys see it, how they can, hey, you know what? I can make money over in America, right? I think this is a huge step. 615-737-1045 is how you join the conversation. Bryce and Brett Kern are hanging out in studio
with us. I'm going to ask them what they're excited to see tonight at Geodis Park, and maybe get into a little live. You brought up Live Golf. I'd be curious to know your thoughts on that. And
I didn't mean to. I just thought Saudi Arabia and then Live. I just automatically kind of runs together.
Well, it's just one of the most fascinating stories in sports, and I might ask you for an opinion on Titans preseason punting or two if you've got it in you.
Oh boy,
I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Kern hanging out in studio with us. We've been talking a little Nashville SC. Leagues Cup action continues tonight. They're hosting Monterey at Geodis Park, an 8:30 kickoff. You can hear it right here on 104.5 The Zone. So because it is such a late kickoff, you guys are not going to be in attendance.
Halftime will be my bedtime. I play basketball Wednesday mornings at 5:15. So,
With who? Who are you getting?
A lot of other guys that just love ball. There's a Vrabel-ism for you. Just love ball.
Did you see it was his birthday yesterday?
Was Ben around or no?
No, Ben is not. Well,
Because I've heard some stories about Ben and what he's done. I'm talking like gone to Arthur Smith's house, his personal house, and like gotten through the back door with the help of his wife and got him at home. Ben doesn't stop at anything to get you on your birthday.
So he pied Arthur Smith in his own home?
Well, pie is loose. It could be anything.
It's whatever will fit in a pie tin.
Whatever fits in a pie tin. It could be. He's gotten suck up with baby powder and shaving cream, and he got me on my birthday at a restaurant with the dessert.
The dessert at the restaurant.
Yeah.
He was threatening me on my birthday. We were at SEC Media Days. I thought that he was going to show up 2 days in a row. He came with us to SEC Media Days because he wanted to troll Aaron Murray about his golf game. I don't know if you have played with Ben and Aaron, but he wanted to come and talk about Georgia and chop it up on some D-Hop stuff as well.
You weren't special enough to get a pie.
I was not.
The threat alone is enough to make you enough to make you sweat.
It's the fear. It's a real thing.
The fear is real.
Because Vrabel, I know, it was not secure in his position yesterday, and the only reason that I know that Ben was not going to go above and beyond to get him is because Ben is at his lake house currently.
But that wouldn't surprise me if Ben would drive up from his lake house just to get Vrabel and then drive back. Don't put it past Ben to do something like that.
Ben was the person who informed me that it was Vrabel's birthday with a picture of him having gotten Mike in the office.
I can only imagine what his calendar looks like on his iPhone. How many birthdays he's gotten there.
Bryce, do you have any friends who do things like this, who play birthday pranks?
Thankfully, no.
No?
Yeah,
nobody's saran wrapping cars the way that, because you're high school now, right?
Going into 8th grade.
Okay. Well, the fact that you were even going into 8th grade is as old as I felt.
I told him, I was like, look, you want to try to scare your sisters, you want to try to, play pranks on people, expect the return. And usually, especially with pranks, the return is usually worse than what you gave out.
Yeah.
So just trying to give wisdom.
Listen, it's always head on a swivel when it comes to training camp time, as I'm sure, people can see the hijinks on Hard Knocks and things like that. But to actually experience it in an NFL locker room is different. Is Ben the most prolific prankster that was in the locker room during your time?
Yes, hands down.
Hands down.
Hands down, not even close.
Not even close, because I know Suckup was not innocent in these things.
No, but usually Ben's the one that started it. And then Ben kind of realized, okay, wait, Ryan has more time than I do, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to find somebody else to prank. But it went a little bit. It was more personal for them. Like, it was, in the locker room a little bit, but it would carry out outside of football. And that's just kind of where I'm like, you know what? I'm not down for that.
No. So, at a certain point, you would think that you age out of that, and I don't think Ben is ever going to age out of that.
No, as he shouldn't.
There's always got to be one.
Yeah.
At this point.
There's always that one.
There's always got to be one.
That's right.
But yesterday was Vrabel's birthday, and in the absence of Ben, they've got these, for social media, they're doing these, they've got a camera on them coming out of the bubble, basically, now. And as you're leaving practice for the day, there's a prompt, and you have to do the prompt, or you have the option to do the prompt into the camera there. So for last week, I think it was, what would be your walk-up song? And you had, guys singing everything from Lil Yachty to Georgia on My Mind by Ray Charles, as Terry McCormick would say, little such and such. It's the most Terry McCormick joke in the history of Terry. But they were doing yesterday's prompt was do your best Vrabel impression. And I don't think nobody wanted
it.
Not one.
Yeah.
Not one, not even Carthon, not even the new GM. Was disinterested in doing a Mike Vrabel impression.
The only person that would have touched that would be Compton.
And he's good.
Like,
they bring him in even after cutting him a couple of times. Now they still bring him in for the rookies.
For the skits, yeah. Because the rookies have gotten that bad at doing skits. It's pathetic.
So what's the gold standard? Because like I think people see these things, and every once in a while you'll see like Aiden Hutchinson having to sing whatever his favorite pregame song or something like that is for the Lions last year on Hard Knocks. But like, what is the gold standard of rookie skits?
I mean, a skit that's like something that Will did. Where you're kind of. I mean, it takes a lot, to be able to go up there and impersonate a coach. And really, I mean, you're making fun of the coach.
Especially
right?
in training camp.
Especially in training camp.
You're asking the person who's directly responsible for your job security.
For your job, and you're going after him.
Yeah.
Right? Wesley Woodyard had, he had some funny ones. I mean, Wes and I were rookies together in Denver, and he went up the first night, and he started doing a skit making fun of his position coach. And, I mean, it got the guys rolling to the point where the next night, people were like, Wood.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, here we go.
Do
he
it
went
again.
up and did another skit, right? But things have changed a little bit. I'm trying to remember the guy with the Dolphins, what year that was, like 2015, 2016, where he was talking about the hazing and the verbal abuse and all that kind of stuff. And everybody kind of like pumped the brakes on
Jonathan. It was Richie Incognito and
Yes.
Jonathan. I can't remember. Was it Jonathan Martin, the last name of that tackle? I remember where he played football, Stanford. I remember there was a commission on bullying that was put together that never actually got together to
right. And so
formulate any decision on the bullying.
So that kind of came pumping the brakes on a lot of the quote unquote hazing stuff that haircuts and all that kind of stuff. And so I feel like from that point on, the skits and all that stuff have been, now it's just, all right, sing your favorite song, hopefully tell a funny joke, right? And that's it.
And that's the extent. And if the jokes are bad, it's just everybody booing the rookies. It's not like there's no real repercussions.
There's taking things out. Like now guys will go on an app and they'll try to do
Chat GPT.
Right. And it's just, no, I want a skit where you guys actually have to come together, think about what you're going to say, right, and make guys laugh. And so it's just become, and the last thing you want to do is tick Vrabel off with that, because he's been around for a long time with the skits and all that kind of stuff. And so now it's just, here, sing the song, which you can't sing, or now you're rapping to some song nobody knows, right?
Acapella.
Right, acapella. And, it's just changed a lot, but I don't know. It's frustrating, but you got guys like Compton that would come in and and they would save the day. Unfortunately,
there is a degree of personality in locker rooms that and maybe this is how I age, where I'm just the old man shaking a fist at the cloud saying nobody's as honest and upfront or as comfortable doing that publicly or participating in skits or doing all these things. Like Woodyard, one of the highlights of me covering this football team has been your guys' games against the Jags. With Jarrell mouthing off about Blake Bortles and Woodyard putting on the Jaguar print
jacket,
suit jacket, and saying that they're going hunting, and Delaney after Cleveland, they are who we thought they were. Like that doesn't exist anymore. And I know some of that's like, I know what Vrabel's media meetings look like, and I know that they are very anti that.
Correct.
In all senses. But I don't think that there's any harm in having a little bit of professional wrestling involved, especially when it comes to division rivalries, because I think that's just what makes this stuff so much more fun. It's fun already. It's sports. We all have fun with sports.
You need it though.
You need it
a little bit.
I think you need it.
Right.
Just to pick up the vibes a little bit, to give that, just to give that little extra added energy to get you through a week 17 game at Jacksonville when the weather is going to be miserable and it's going to be a slog, and it's never an easy thing necessarily unless you're Derrick Henry and you own them.
That's true.
But
that's true.
But like I never really saw the harm in stuff like that.
No. As long as you could back it up.
Yeah.
And those guys could.
Yeah.
So I think that's what probably made it, okay to do. But I think there's a fine line with that. You got guys, I guess the stuff that when you got like Sean Payton calling out, it's like, okay, I understand it. You're being upfront, honest, but then you're backtracking on your comments.
Well, that was the thing. Like the cowardice in that is just kind of like, bud, you say, if you're going to say it, say it.
Right. Because you do play the Jets.
Week 5.
Right.
And now it's
kind of like what bulletin board material have you given? Right. Whereas there's just something about you when you play, your division opponents, right? You see them twice a year. I I loved it. Because it added too, because you are playing them twice a year, right? And it becomes to the point where you know what they do, they know what you do, right? You need a little something, right? Where the Jets and the Broncos really don't play each other. Obviously, they don't play each other every year, not in the same division. You might play them once every 4 years. You might, depending on where you fall schedule wise, in the division, you might. I mean, I remember for a while I felt like we were playing Buffalo every year. Right.
Yeah.
Just depends on how it falls.
Weird,
where you finish.
5-year wrinkle with the Bills.
Right. It just depends on how it falls with where you finish in the division. So that's a stretch for me. But the inter squad or the interdivision trash talk. I mean, that's awesome. Love it.
Brett and Bryce Kern hanging out here with us in studio. So speaking of backing things up, Nashville SC tonight at Geodis Park. Leagues Cup play continues against Monterey. I know it's the first day of school tomorrow, Bryce, but what are you looking forward to seeing? What do you want to see from this squad tonight as they try and continue to keep their hopes alive?
I just want to see them score a couple of goals and win ultimately, because that would be great.
Sure.
If they go on to the championship, then they clinch a spot in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. But it's whether you want to weigh your options. Do you want to go away on the road where the crowd will be against you at Philadelphia, or do you want to stay here and compete with Messi and Inter Miami? It's just like a tit-for-tat situation that you'll have to weigh your options sooner to the championship.
And Lucas, for the audience who may not be necessarily informed, explain the significance of what it is that Bryce just laid out, CONCACAF and qualifying.
So most people, even if you're not a soccer fan, you're familiar with UEFA Champions League, right? Where it's the upper tier of every league in Europe, plays in one big tournament that is played throughout the course of the season. Same thing with CONCACAF Champions League. CONCACAF is just the North American Confederation, the governing body for all North American soccer. To qualify for CONCACAF Champions League is extremely difficult. You have to win the Supporter Shield, which is be the best team in Major League Soccer, win MLS Cup. It is the very much upper tier of MLS, Liga MX in Mexico, and other smaller North American leagues that get to qualify for CONCACAF Champions League. So it's something that's very hard to come by, and Nashville finds itself one win away now from qualifying for that. Or in the event of a loss tonight, if they were to win the third place game on Saturday, they would qualify for CONCACAF Champions League. If they win Leagues Cup, they automatically advance to the CONCACAF Champions League knockout rounds. You just skip right over the group stage. So you cannot understate how big of an opportunity that is for a club like Nashville in year 4 of its existence in Major League Soccer. The stakes are extremely high, and I think that they've done a really nice job with Leagues Cup making the stakes high financially as well for players with bonuses, to where teams are coming out with strong lineups each and every game. I wasn't sure how a lot of teams were going to approach this, if they saw it as a break in the regular season, play some younger guys, get a lot of rotation in. Every MLS and Liga MX team has taken this competition very, very seriously because of how high the stakes are. Nashville will be facing a very strong, a very quality side tonight in Monterey with a very high international pedigree. So definitely going to be a massive challenge and an opportunity to make history.
I just think that the stakes being what they are makes this so much more compelling. And, it's like soccer really hasn't needed much help here to succeed. Like it's, right. I know the idea of that was and there's always going to be a segment of the population that is going to turn their nose up at soccer for whatever reason. But I'm sure there was people who did that with hockey in Tennessee when the Preds first got here. And I think having games, a competitive team who is playing games of legitimate stakes for basically their entire existence thus far, I think that's helped generate the kind of excitement and investment that you've seen over there at Geodis Park. I have a great time literally every time that I go. And I feel like they're always playing meaningful games.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful park. It's a great place to go watch a game. It's yeah, I mean, the confines of it, it's awesome. You kind of feel like the stadium too has a setup of kind of a smaller European stadium. And it's a beautiful place. I love going there. Now I feel like, once you figure out your parking situation, like you got your spot, where you want to go park, it's a great place. And so, tonight, I mean, with Monterey, Lucas and I were talking about it, the international caps that they have. What were you saying, Lucas? 400 plus?
Nearly 400 combined career appearances for Mexico, Argentina, Spain, Colombia. Yeah,
that's a lot of caps, right? And you think about the America with Nashville. You got Walker, who's got some caps, Shaq Moore, You got some guys, but I mean, 400's a lot.
Yeah.
400, that's a lot. And so, the other thing too is, Lucas and I were talking about it is, the MLS is hosting the Leagues Cup. So all these teams from Mexico are having to travel. And where they've gone to win, and not, they've won some really good games in some really tough spots. LA, Seattle. I mean, those are tough places to play in the MLS.
Some of the toughest.
And they've gone up there and just taken care of business and on to the next, right? So, for them to come here tonight is going to be, I would say it's probably one of the biggest games ever at Geodis in its short, history, right?
Yeah,
I think it's easily the biggest game that has been played at that park.
So I shouldn't go.
Look,
Don't laugh, Bryce. Don't laugh.
I had to.
It's, maybe not.
Don't see. My struggle is giving him too much credit to think that he thinks so highly of himself that his presence
No,
has
it's
an
not
impact
a good
in
thing.
these
This
games.
is not feeding my vanity, which of course is an issue. That I agree with you. We have to protect ourselves from that on a regular basis. Otherwise, I'll turn into a full-blown ego monster. But this is not a good thing. I'm not proud of this.
Well, I also will say you don't know the next opportunity you will have. This is the third Mexican team now that Nashville has faced in this tournament, Toluca to Club America to now Monterrey. All of those teams have shown up with a big contingent of fans. And for me, the coolest thing this tournament has done is blend together this mix of Mexican and American soccer culture where it doesn't matter that those Mexican teams are having to travel every game. They have support.
Yeah.
Every stadium.
Everywhere.
Every city. It is insane. The Mexican national team is one of the most well-supported national teams in the world. I mean, right up there at the top. So it's going to be a really fun environment. If you were at the Club America game last Tuesday, you know what I'm talking about. Hopefully not as chaotic at the end. But it is going to be lively and electric tonight at Geodis Park.
That's like the norm, though, down there.
Yeah.
Like what happened?
Yes, 100%.
100%.
A couple of weeks or last week?
Last Tuesday.
Last Tuesday? Just
If
madness?
you ever watch soccer, especially if you get to watch USA when they go down to Guatemala or some of the Central American countries for a match, some of those places they have 10-foot, 15-foot high fencing around the stadium.
Oh, some of the
around
craziest
the pitch.
fights or incidents that I've seen are at international soccer stadiums.
I mean, they're throwing fireworks. It's crazy. So hopefully it won't happen here, but it's just the environment. Just go.
Okay.
Just go.
Brett and Bryce Kern, kind enough to spend some time with us off the golf course today. What's the rest of the afternoon look like? Pickleball?
No, Bryce, you got cross-country practice here in a little bit. Face of excitement. So he's going to do cross-country, and then that'll roll right into soccer season. And so I just encouraged him, look, I mean, if you want to be in tip-top shape for soccer, right, you'll be ahead of the game because there's not many kids, his age that are going to do both. And so, I mean, when you start, because soccer conditioning, I hated it, right?
Sure.
And so to be able to do cross-country and to be in shape going into soccer, you're just going to be one leg up, no pun intended, on your friends. So yeah, got a little bit of that.
Is that sound advice? Is that resonating with you at this point, or is that eye roll that we caught on camera? About the assessment that you're giving at this point from your dad's advice?
No, I think my dad's giving me sound advice. It's just that it's a love-hate relationship with cross country. I don't want to run we ran
Nobody
2
likes to
miles
run.
yesterday at a really fast pace, and I was just
And the heat
trying
too,
to catch
it doesn't
my
help
breath.
you.
Yeah.
The heat doesn't help, but
Yeah,
it's good
but-
for you though. It's good for the body.
Yeah.
Good for the body.
It's good for the body.
615-737-1045. We'll talk some Titans coming up next. Welcome back to the show. Brett and Bryce hanging out with us for one more segment. 615-737-1045 is the number. We were talking during the break about a variety of different things, but I had no idea that your dad, Bryce, your grandpa, had the background in both U.S. men's soccer here nationally and internationally that he did. That was complete, and that was new news for me.
I so jacked up these headphones.
He went and did it.
Seth on the chat, bro. I'm sorry, dude.
What?
I messed these up.
Well, you can't let the chat get to you.
Okay, sorry. All right.
This is a daily fight that Lucas and I have against it. We love them.
Yeah,
there
well.
are people, and in fact, they're probably our Lucas. You would agree that they are our most loyal people.
Yes.
Probably, because it's the same characters for the most part each and every day, at least commenting.
Well, it sounds like the chat is another voice for Lucas in how he probably feels about you.
Yes.
Yeah, correct. That's what as I'm reading some of this stuff here, it's Lucas.
I have 25 different burner accounts. So I'm just constantly typing away over here.
I wish that was true.
Well, I jacked these up, so we'll just keep going.
Look
but
at
yeah, my pops had he shattered his kneecap when he was 26, so it kind of ended his soccer career pretty quickly. But yeah, I mean, I remember him telling me the story about he played in the CONCACAF down in Guatemala. 15 high foot fence, throwing rocks, bananas. I mean, you name it. It's
Wild
just
West.
like wow, anything goes. And he played goals, so of course, he's like, you're trying to stay focused on the game, but
That's tough. He's just stationary.
what's going to be thrown behind me over this fence, right? So
It's an easy target too.
Literal head on a swivel.
yeah, head on a swivel.
We were also talking about the idea that you may be the only person in NFL history who's seen two 2,000-yard rushers for the same franchise, because I had not realized we had covered the gamut, right? We'd gotten into high school football. We talked about Kevin Mawai, now the head coach at Lipscomb. After Trent Dilfer, you had intersected with Mawai, which also means that you had intersected with CJ early on in your Titans career. And, of course, you saw CJ do it and then Derek do it. We would have to look this up, but if you're not the only person in NFL history who's seen that.
Like to be teammates.
Be teammates.
Teammates with, yes. Absolutely.
Like to the point where if I were to see CJ and Derek, they would both say, "Hey, Brett, what's up?" Like that kind of teammates. Yeah.
By the way, Derek and Jeff, the only ones comfortable imitating Vrabel. Those were the only two that did it. I mean,
Jeff can do whatever he wants. He's a large man that, if he wants to intimidate Vrabel, go ahead.
So I want to ask you a question, an actual football question, since we haven't done any of that in the hour that you've been
What time is it? We've been here for how long?
You have 51 minutes thus far, which is typically the way that I like to do it when you come in studio, because, you and I, we've had the opportunity to talk about a lot of football over the course of our time knowing each other. Yep. And that's all well and good, but I like to, you have other interests, and I think that's okay to talk about when you come in studio. But the idea of improving upon directional punting, that is something that you have unique insight on. The logistics of it, all the different kind of training and resources that you have to kind of analyze what it is that you're trying to accomplish in those situations. That was something that got brought up from this past preseason game, and I know that Stonehouse is, boy wonder at this point, but for good reason. But, he's not a complete player at this stage, and that was something that Vrabel was very quick to point out. Right. So the idea of improving upon directional punting, like, what kind of goes into that for the audience who's, has no earthly idea?
Yeah, I mean, it's, when I came out, from Toledo, it was the guys, back there returning, you had to directional punt if you wanted to play, right? Devin Hester, Darren Sproles, I could keep going, right?
There's nobody above Hester on the list, right?
McCluster, right? Arenas when he was in Kansas. They put both of them back there, right? They had two punt returners back there, and it was like, which is the lesser of two evils? Oh, I know, punt it out of bounds, right? And so directional punting was more of a premium when I came out, and so I knew, like, for me to have longevity in this league, I had to be really good at directional punting. Whereas I think now it's because it is a hard craft. Really, when you're somebody that just bombs it down the middle, you're like that pitcher that comes in and can throw it 103, 104, 105. Like, this is my fastball. This is what you're getting. Can you hit it? Can you not? Right.
The way the baseball, people, like the way that baseball has kind of changed a little bit for the worse, where you've got just flamethrowers out there on a regular basis. So it's either a home run or a strike, it feels
Correct.
like.
Right. And so, whereas in my case, it was more of like the Greg Maddux, Glavine, where it's, okay, hey, I'm going to put this slider right on the outside of the plate, or I'm going to, throw this right. You have a gamut of pitches, and you're going to place them where you need to place them. Right. So you really kind of have two different things. And I feel like now the way special teams is, you're keeping guys on teams for special teams, right? You got your core guys. You might have your two gunners those are their plays for the game.
Yeah.
Right. You get your special teams, maybe kickoff return. You're probably out there as a jammer on punt return. But you're on the team, like, Slater in New England, right? He's done it for 14, 15 years, right? But he is a stud gunner. And so that's what these guys do. And so I feel like with the better quality of special teams players out there, the returners have become. It's not. I don't know. There's not as much of a premium on it. It's more or less like, hey, catch the ball, don't fumble it, just get us the ball back, so we can send our offense out, so we can send Mahomes back out there, so we can send Josh right. Just catch it and don't turn it over, right? And so in that case, if you have a bomber out there, if there's not as much of a threat, like Devin Hester, all of his punt returns, all of his touchdowns were when the punt was over 50 yards, right? And so the play was, all right, how can I hit one? Same with Tyreek Hill, right?
Yeah.
All of his punt returns were over roughly, it was about a 48, 49-yard punt. Well, how can I hit it high enough, short it, right? Which is kind of the opposite of what you're thinking of bombing it, so that they can't get going. And where I feel like now it's just, hey, you know what? Hit it down the middle, and we're going to go cover it like a kickoff, and that's what it is. And so, directional punting, it takes a comfort level to be able to do it, because there's a fine line between hitting 155 out of bounds, and everybody's like, oh, great punt, and shanking 125 out of bounds. I mean, you're talking a matter of an inch or two in your drop or maybe your steps. And so, when you get that 25-yarder in your head, all of a sudden that stays up there a lot longer than the 55-yarder, right, that you can put right out of bounds. So there's a fine line, but I think, over time, it's just a matter of reps, getting comfortable with it, doing it over and over again. But still in the standpoint, like Chicago, right? I mean, that's some of the worst sun that you can play in. Like that play, I hate playing there because it's usually windy.
Interesting.
It's windy, and that sun is brutal.
Yeah.
And so, when Stoney had that punt, let's see, it'd be going south to north or right to left on the screen, right? And the returner let it hit. Well, he can't see the ball. He can't see it, right? And so he lets it hit, and by the time it comes back, it's like, oh, I think I can make a play. Well, that gunner's already there. Bam, fumble. There you go, Titans ball. And so was it a pretty punt? Was it directional? No, but in some ways it was effective, right?
Oh, he's still averaging
net
44.
Right. He probably said, you know what? I didn't have a great day, and you did 51, 52, and you netted whatever 44, 45. Okay.
Yeah.
On to the next.
Will you guys come back and hang out sometime? Because speaking of reps, Bryce is already better at this than I am. He's more confident in front of a microphone than I am. He probably has more broadcast reps than I do from his Pro Bowl work. You guys have to come back and hang out at some point.
Absolutely. Next time I get your headphones and you can get my headphones. How's that sound, bud?
Shocking to nobody that the headphones of Robert Walsh would be askew. That sounds about right. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys.
Absolutely.
Coming up next, we are going to get into some Titans preseason work. They are on their way up today, later this afternoon, to Minnesota for some joint camp practices. What are we keeping an eye out for? We'll tell you coming up next.
It is 12:02. Good afternoon from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. It's a travel day for the Tennessee Titans headed up to Minnesota, where they will begin joint practice against the Vikings this week ahead of Saturday's preseason matchup. In NFL news, the New York Jets are signing free agent running back Dalvin Cook on a one-year deal worth up to $8.5 million. Cook, not the only free agent running back to find a landing spot Monday. Ezekiel Elliott signing with the New England Patriots on a one-year deal worth up to $6 million. And in the AFC South, Shane Steichen made it official in Indianapolis. Rookie Anthony Richardson is the Colts' starting quarterback moving forward. Tonight, Nashville Soccer Club hosts Mexican side Monterrey in the League's Cup semifinal at Geodis Park. A win would send Nashville to the final on Saturday and automatically qualify them for CONCACAF Champions League 2024. Kickoff set for 8:30. Pregame coverage begins on The Zone tonight at 8 p.m. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour already. What happened? Show's moving fast on this Tuesday. We're happy to have you along for the ride. 615-737-1045 is the number. Join the discussion whenever you would like. We would be more than pleased to have you either on the phones or in the F&M Bank chat, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. Spent a lot of time talking about the Titans throughout the course of the week for obvious reasons. Lucas said it in his update. They're on the road later this afternoon, headed to Minnesota. Preseason game Saturday night, 2 joint camp practices in between. The anticipation or the expectation rather is that the starters will play or will practice and not necessarily play. I remember even in joint camp practices on the road, how many years have we done that? We did joint camp practices in Tampa 2 years ago, I want to say. No, maybe that was last season. When do you remember? Because we had an awful time trying to do the radio show. Do you remember the connection was terrible? The heat in Tampa Bay in August was frying my laptop.
That was 2 years ago. Last year, the Titans hosted the Cardinals. And I don't.
They hosted another. I think they hosted 2.
They hosted the Bucs too.
Because a lot of the Cardinals players didn't travel. There was some kind of sickness, that was never reported as COVID, but I think there was a COVID situation.
Oh, they hosted the Bucs for joint practice. I remember,
and then the Cardinals
because Rondé Barber was here. Because
and you did
I did the Superbook thing with the Barbers, and who are they both Hall of Famers? I know.
Ooh,
Rondé just got in.
Rondé just went in. I don't know if the other Barber. I don't know if Marion is it Marion Barber?
What do you Marion?
Who's Marion
Totally
Barber?
different Barber, man.
Which Barber
Tiki.
am I thinking of? Tiki.
Such a unique
Marion
name.
Barber?
How do you forget Tiki?
Isn't Marion Barber like the mayor of D.C. that had the cocaine incident? I can't remember.
No, Marion Barber was the running back
Barber
for the Dallas Cowboys. Not.
Oh no, he passed away.
Oh man,
he
rest
passed
in
away
peace.
recently.
Yes, he did.
That's why I was thinking.
It
about
was in
that
June. And in fact, other tragic running back news. Alex Collins. I don't know if you saw this.
Yeah. I just
passed away.
But they haven't said any cause about Alex Collins, right? He's 28 or he's 29.
Yeah,
he was 29. Oof. Marion Barry is the disgraced Washington D.C. mayor that had the cocaine incident. Okay, getting all my names mixed up. Anyway, we will talk about the Titans joint camp practices. I'm not going this year. The logistics were going to be difficult. I'm going to be there for the preseason game, for not the joint practices. We will still have players on the show. It will be at a different time than we have normally done because the practices, Lucas, I don't know if you noticed, are significantly later. They will be practicing. They will be on the field during our noon hour both days. So it will not be the morning practices that we've become accustomed to and the press conferences as a result. So it'll be a little bit of a different schedule, but we'll still have players and we'll still have Vrabel press conferences. Motorcycle accident. Was that reported this morning? The last thing that I read on Alex Collins was last night when the news came out.
Ramon just texted me. It was a motorcycle accident.
Awful.
Yeah, that is horrible news. Again, it's tough because you just associate these guys, having never known them personally, with what you saw from them as athletes, but nothing but good things coming out about the guy that Alex Collins was. Am I mistaken in thinking that he was – do you remember that crazy play, Arkansas against Ole Miss, where 4th and forever –
This would have been like 2015?
14,
Is that right?
Hunter Henry is running around the right side, and then he just launches the ball back to the other side of the field, and the Arkansas player picks it up. I can't remember if that was Alex Collins. I'll double check it. But what a career he had at Arkansas. Over 1,500 yards his last year there, and then a good NFL career as well. Just absolutely tragic.
Alex Ray in the F&M Bank chat says, stay off the bikes. It's not worth it. Motorcycle accidents.
Yeah.
Some of the, and I listen, I understand that people, I've never been on a motorcycle myself. I'm sure there's a great amount of joy that you feel when you're on a bike like that. It's just, it seems so risky. Anyway, joint camp practices. I don't know how no graceful way for me to transition. But the joint camp work that they are going to get, we have talked about this. It would be my gut feeling that starters would practice in Minnesota but not play in the preseason game at US Bank Stadium on Saturday night. Now, we'll see what they ultimately decide. It would not be unprecedented for them to play starters. It would be unprecedented for them to play Derek. Like, Derek in the preseason, I don't think is a thing ever. There's that dude, he had over 350 touches again last year. It's just crazy. It's insane, the workload. When I don't more now because we're getting closer to the season. Like, I'll just casually be scrolling through Pro Football Reference and looking for numbers that might catch my eye. And Derek's numbers are always going to be eye-popping in everything really but efficiency, because we know the efficiency has dropped in the last 2 seasons. But just the volume that guy continues to have in a way that no other what NFL running back, what player in any position is having that kind of volume at what it is that they're being asked to do, especially as brutal as running back is. So Derek in the preseason, I don't think is ever going to be a thing.
Not just in the NFL, in high school, in college.
It's insanity. Yeah, but even more, the fact that he does it at the NFL level and that you just consider it, it's just another Derrick Henry season when nobody else is doing it that way.
But it's not like he came into the league as a guy who had, didn't have that tread on his tires. Because
the whole reason I thought he was a second-round pick was because how many carries did Saban give him in the championship game?
Huge knock against him coming into the draft.
It was like 40 carries. Something outrageous. Anyway. So long story short, I am of the opinion less likely that starters like Tannehill and Derek play in the preseason. Byard and Harold, I imagine they'd give them their option if they would like to get a couple of snaps in the preseason. Then it's not beyond the pale. We've seen things like that before. But beyond that, joint camp practices is going to be the meat of the work that the starters get this.
More valuable than the game.
Without question. And I think the value of it comes in this season, particularly for the offensive line group. For the offensive line group, that's going to be the thing that we continue to harp on, the thing that we continue to stress. The depth there is poor. It's poor in many places around the league. That's not specific to the Titans. It's not something that they've done dramatically wrong versus another franchise. Like, good offensive linemen are really, really hard to find, bar none. But Brian Flores is the defensive coordinator in Minnesota this year. I was reading, just kind of catching up on some things going on with the Vikings, particularly from their athletic beat writer, and apologies, I've forgotten the athletic beat writer's name, who was saying that the offensive coordinator for the Vikings had said publicly he's just tired of going against Brian Flores on a regular basis because they blitz the holy hell out of them on every snap, and they want to stop max protecting in practice. Things like that. So that's what I think it's going to be, a really, really strong and sound test for this Titans starting offensive line group, and something that Mike Vrabel spoke to on the idea of practicing against somebody different in preseason work this year.
I think they've got good skill players. I think that they got good skill players. I think that's something that can help us. I think defensively, the multiple, with B-Flow, Kirk's always done a fantastic job at the end of the game, situationally. And so I felt like just a lot of those factors that, could help us. We do all those things. We do those situations. And, I thought it'd be a great opportunity for us.
So the emphasis on situational football again, and that's what, it's all glorified training camp practices, even the preseason games. So, I don't know when him and Kevin O'Connell, I don't know the answer to this question, and the news typically comes out around owners' meetings in the spring when they do those in March when all the coaches and all the GMs are together. So maybe that's when these things get hashed out. But I guess I don't know that the question has ever been asked, like, how do you come up with who you're going to practice against? Because I don't know if Vrabel and Kevin O'Connell, hearing that clip back is making me think about it again. I don't know if Vrabel and Kevin O'Connell had a conversation at breakfast of the owners' meetings to say, hey, how do you like to practice in training camp? How do you like to practice in training camp? Oh, that fits with what I want to do. Let's do it.
I mean, last week you had Niners and Raiders practicing together, like teams within their own divisions.
Well, and
those
aren't in the same divisions.
No, they're West and different conferences.
Sure.
Why does my brain want to? My brain always wants to put San Francisco and Las Vegas in the same division.
Buddy, I just called Tiki Barber Marion Barber. You're off the hook today. Anyway, I think that Giles says maybe do not draft Panda and Raiden's first and second round, and the O-line is better. Sure, but you can do that in any year with any team, right? Maybe don't draft, like Chris Jackson got waived yesterday. Is Christian Fulton now the only remaining player from the 2020 draft class on this roster? I think he might be.
Ooh.
I think Darrington Evans is gone. Isaiah famously gone. Who else was in that draft class? Laurel Murchison gone. Chris Jackson now waived.
Yeah, I think he is.
I think Christian Fulton.
It wasn't a very big class.
It was not, but
6 players drafted.
Still,
which I guess is
that's about average.
They drafted 6 this year, right?
I think it's about average.
Yeah, Cole McDonald.
Gone his first training camp.
Yeah.
So Christian Fulton is the only remaining player from John Robinson's 2020 draft class. And
in a contract year.
That is an extreme example, right? Where an entire draft class that you needed to get some value out of, you got next to nothing, and one of them, your biggest question is, can he stay on the field? So while I understand that as criticism, and it's part of the reason why that general manager does not have his job anymore, there are plenty of NFL franchises who you could cite positions that they've been chasing because the draft isn't an exact science. Now, to have back-to-back picks like those, pretty glaring. But I think that is where the most value is going to come this week. 615-737-1045. What are you most looking forward to hearing about or reading about from the Titans joint camp practices? Who are you most excited to see competing against one another in the Titans joint camp practices against the Vikings? We'll take your phone calls. We'll talk about some wide receiver room stuff as well coming up next. Wide receivers. We've talked a lot about them all summer long, all spring, right? Well, now, Titans wide receiver core is as good as it's been since probably A.J. Brown's rookie year with Corey Davis and Adam Humphries for a period of time. No Jonnu Smith anymore. He's in Atlanta, but the successor, the heir to Jonnu in Chigaconquo. And an offensive line that is questionable, still questionable, even though they, I think, in one drive exceeded expectations and made a lot of people who were watching them for the first time, a lot of you in the audience who were watching them for the first time, feel better about what it is that we've been seeing at training camp practices. But wide receivers, I know, was something that was a big topic of discussion on the postgame show. Lucas is doing the postgame show for Titans postgame coverage, as will Brent Doherty. They're splitting the game. So you're doing home or away?
I'm doing Titans Talk Back following preseason.
Titans Talk Back is the name of the show.
Yeah, following preseason games and road games.
Preseason games and road games.
Yeah, Brent Doherty is doing Titans Talk Back following the home games at Nissan Stadium. I will be at Nissan Stadium for the home games.
Okay, you're going to be in the booth.
Yes, I'll be here at Network Control and doing Titans Talk Back after road games.
Okay, very good. So you and Dyson on Titans Talk Back, you told me that you had gotten into, obviously with Dyson on the show, you're going to get into a conversation about wide receivers. What was kind of the nature of it? What sparked the conversation, and where did you guys end up?
Well, some interesting performances from the wide receiver position. I think you saw some good things from Trayshawn Harrison, the UDFA out of Oregon State, which is consistent with training camp. Kyrus Jackson, I think, helped himself, not just at wide receiver, but in the return game on Saturday. But the crux of it was we kind of just laid it out. Said, all right, let's go down the list, right? Burks, Hopkins, Phillips, locks, right? Those three are locks to make this football team.
Yes.
Really hard to envision a scenario where Kyle Phillips is not the primary punt returner for this team and not on the 53. We'll throw Chris Moore in there, I think.
I'm going to add him as a lock.
Yeah, Chris Moore for what he does on special teams, veteran presence in that room. So that's 4.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say the Titans are keeping 5. Then you get into that next sort of tier, and it got me wondering, is Nick Westbrook-Akina, how safe is he to make this roster? If the Titans are keeping 5 receivers and he's going up against Trayshawn Harrison and Reggie Robertson and who else has flashed from that position group? Kyrus Jackson. I mean, Colton Dowell, we've talked about as you can probably put that guy in the practice squad, develop him a little bit. The risk reward is there as a 7th-round pick out of UT Martin. I know he's a local guy. People want to see him succeed. I want to see him succeed, but it makes sense, right, for Colton Dowell to be on the practice squad after roster cut day. But it's the first time that I have thought that Nick Westbrook-Akina may not make this roster with that battle that's happening at the bottom of the depth chart. If the Titans were to keep 6, he's probably good. And then I didn't even mention Racey McMath in that whole equation. So the bottom of that Titans depth chart at wide receiver is really interesting because after those 4 names, you're talking about 1, maybe 2 spots.
I don't know. Racey and NWI is a good toss-up because NWI, the thing that makes him valuable is the fact that he can play all 3 positions within their offense. He can play outside, he can X, Z, and slot. Though he knows all 3 positions within their offense, he's been with this coaching staff for a long time. He seems like he's in the Chris Moore mold where, even as he ages, he's still willing to play special teams in a way that makes him inherently valuable. It's not like Racey's not, but Racey was drafted specifically, John Robinson citing special teams ability. To my knowledge, Racey has not panned out with special teams ability that way. Not necessarily as a returner, but as a gunner or as a special teams contributor with that kind of size and speed that maybe you develop into a wide receiver. What NWI was drafted, undrafted, but was kept on this roster for special teams value and then turned into a more functional and operational wide receiver. The 3 quarterbacks is why the roster math is so hard.
Yeah.
Because I'm operating as if it's all but a foregone conclusion that they're keeping 3.
Quarterbacks.
Quarterbacks.
Yeah. I at this moment would agree.
I would say that the 4 that you named as locks, including Chris Moore at the wide receiver position, I would also agree with that. I would give NWI the edge over Racy. But it's not like NWI's contract situation. It's a 1-year, like 1.01. It's a little more than that, but it's not much more than that, is my point. It's not something that's going to be a great burden to them. There's not dead money associated with it. It's pretty clean that way, which they gave themselves the flexibility to be able to move on from guys like NWI should somebody emerge. I just don't know that, like, Reggie Roberson, right, has special teams value, had a nice catch and run in the preseason game, has done a little bit in practice. I just don't know that puts, like, does that help them win a football game this year more than NWI does? I would probably argue against. It's a good problem to have. It's a much different discussion, a much different problem than we were talking about. When Mike Vrabel says he hopes they have to make hard decisions, this is what now this is exactly the scenario that you're presented with, not just at the quarterback position, but at wide receiver as well. This is a good problem.
Didn't really have this discussion a year ago.
No.
Right? Did 2 years ago. The room was interesting with the likes of Chester Rogers and was it Marcus Johnson at the bottom of that depth chart before you knew what was going to pan out with Julio health-wise. Obviously, that didn't work out in the best way, but it has been a couple years since you've had this good problem in the wide receiver room during training camp.
And listen, we're assuming, and I think it's a safe assumption, and it's a fair assumption that there's going to be improvement from Treylon Burks and Kyle Phillips that makes this a more competitive wide receiver room, a higher level wide receiver room than the one that was trotted out last year. I'm assuming that there is going to be steps taken. Michael Wagner says no reason to keep Moore and NWI. Is NWI now a redundancy with Moore? But who like, that's my thing. I know Racy caught all 3 of the passes that he was targeted on Saturday. But
he's not having the camp he had last year.
Racy McMath is not something that I'm overwhelmingly excited about in the way that people seem to want to assign some kind of value to him. That until such time as that dude shows value, I'm going to continue to treat him as what he is. A former, was he a 6th or a 7th? I think he was a 6th.
I think 6 out of LSU.
Former 6th round pick out of LSU that was drafted specifically for special teams. Should Racy McMath not end up on this roster? That should be not surprising to anybody. There's not an argument for anybody but or over NWI from my standpoint. To make the argument for Racy over NWI, I don't think is correct.
Which of those guys that are fighting for that, we'll say for the sake of this conversation, that one spot, NWI, Trayshawn Harrison, Robertson, Racy McMath, throw Kearis Jackson in there. Which of those 5 guys do you think the Titans would run the greatest risk of somebody swooping in and snatching off the practice squad?
Oh, Kearis Jackson.
Yeah. Untapped potential rookie.
I don't know. It depends on the team, right? Because like Vrabel, when they get into, okay, we're losing players, they opt for veterans. They want players who've been in the league, Buster Screen, Dontrell Hilliard, Chris Hubbard, even Dennis Daly, right? They want veterans. They don't want to have to spend additional time ramping up younger players, undrafted players.
But that's why we talk about it with Colton Dow, as in there's not really that risk.
Right.
There's not going to be that demand, with no disrespect whatsoever to Colton Dow, of somebody snatching him off your practice squad.
So
he'll be
the
there.
answer is NWI.
Yeah. He's the most proven guy out there.
Yes. Jackson and Harrison have great upside and would be valuable later. Yes, maybe. But, like, it's not about later. We are past the point for later, right? Now it is the season. Now is about this season. It's not about Will Levis and Malik Willis in 2025.
Right. It's like the quarterback thing, right? Well, they're the future. I want to see them play a whole half. Well, they're not the future now. They're the present now, which means backup quarterback.
Yes, present supersedes future at this particular point in time. We have passed the point. So with that in mind, That is also the way that NFL teams who are looking at other teams' rosters to try and see who might be available and who you might want to add once the 53-man cuts come down. From that standpoint, if the head coach is of the same mindset as Mike Vrabel, then NWI would be more valuable. If the head coach or the general manager, the person making personnel decisions for whatever team would be trying to pick off a wide receiver from the Titans roster, they might value more. They might have had a good grade on Kearis Jackson coming out and pursued him as in the undrafted process, and the Titans maybe gave him more money, or the Titans were a better fit. Titans had better opportunity. This was pre-D-Hop, right? Things have changed.
He's kind of a unique talent in that room, unique skill set. Kearis Jackson, one of the shiftier guys they have out there.
So maybe Kearis Jackson is practice squad. Maybe Kearis Jackson supersedes Mason Kinsey on the practice squad, right? Mason Kinsey, who is the backup to Kyle Phillips. They need a backup slot receiver. They don't have a true backup slot receiver. Kearis Jackson, I'd have to go back and look at by percentage how much he's played in the slot in his career. I don't know that at Georgia. But can he be the backup slot player and then bump a Mason Kinsey out for a practice squad spot? Because that's where Kinsey projects right now.
How many receivers have they typically kept on the practice squad?
Ooh, there's been a few. Kinsey has been the unstoppable force, the unstoppable
I'm just saying at any
force.
given time throughout the course of a season, how many receivers are typically on the practice squad?
I don't think any more than two. Because there's typically a kicker. There's typically a quarterback.
I don't know if there's going to be a quarterback this year.
I don't think there would be either.
So with an extra quarterback on the 53, maybe that means an extra receiver on the practice squad. That works kind of the inverse of
they
of what we're talking.
They do tend to roster and practice squad a fair amount of defensive backs. Like there's always a ton of defensive backs. And that just may be because special teams value better tacklers, whatever their assessment might be in the front office. Agent S. on YouTube says, "Oh man, not Mason Kinsey. Whatever will they do without Kinsey? Fans went nuts over him last season." Well, okay. Let me not fault Mason Kinsey for the sins of a few and it's not a huge portion of the fan base. It's a few overexcited fans, okay? And that's fine. Like Mason Kinsey has done well.
Yeah.
He's done tremendously well.
Dude came out of Barry,
D3,
and he's still around. Yeah, it's impressive.
So let's not denigrate Mason Kinsey because there was an overreaction from a few loud people on social media. 615-737-1045 is how you can join the discussion. Let's go to John in Nashville up first. Hey, John.
Hey, how you doing, Buck?
Good.
I don't understand the whole thing about NWI. Like, what has he proven? He's not contributing on the field. Like, I understand he stays on the roster, but we don't really have a good roster of receivers for him to have been beaten by. You know?
No, but he did you miss the part earlier when I said he can play all three positions in their offense? Like that's a value. That's absolutely a value.
But what value does he bring to those three positions?
Well, that's not as a starter, precious little. You've seen that experience, but as a depth guy, we're talking about the fifth wide receiver on the roster. We're not talking about NWI wide receiver 2 anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Give you that. Definitely a good point.
Appreciate the call, John. Yeah, I mean I get that. Like, but he's not having to start at this point. He may have to. Like if they get down bad again, would you rather have a wide receiver who can play all three positions or can't? That's the logic. He was never meant to be the running mate for Robert Woods or A.J. Brown. Like he was always meant to be a depth player. And circumstances have forced him into where he has been in the last 2 years. That's not his fault. It doesn't mean that he doesn't have value. It just means that he was put in a position where he had to try and produce at a certain level and fell short. That's okay. That doesn't mean that he's not a valuable football player in the long run.
Lehman in Lebanon just dropped, but he had an interesting question. He asked, who's the fastest wide receiver on this football team? Like just straight line speed.
Burks.
Yeah.
I bet it's Traylon. Just because he covers a lot more ground. He's a lot bigger than most of them.
Yeah.
He's bigger. He might be the biggest wide receiver on the roster.
As Coach Mack would say, he eats stripes.
He does. Absolutely. I would say, Racey's probably up there too. Because Racy, I mean, that was why Racy was drafted, because he gets down the field really, really fast and he makes special teams plays, and has yet to do that at this point. Keith Fulton in the comment section says it correctly. Backups are backups. NWI is a backup. That's okay. A fifth wide receiver does not have to be Traylon Burks, DeAndre Hopkins. He doesn't even have to be Kyle Phillips. He has to be able to know what all three of those guys do should one of those guys go down. That's the logic.
Say he's fourth or fifth in the pecking order. I don't know how many teams would have a fourth or fifth receiver with the career production that NWI has had.
It's about trust. They trust him to be able to do that to a certain extent. They know his limitations in the same way that you know his limitations. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't keep him. Familiar face, or at least a familiar voice, Darrington, joining us from the shadows. Hey, bud.
Hey, my boy, what's going on there, Buffett?
It must be football season. Welcome back.
I guess so. Just two quick questions. When are we going to get rid of Caleb Farley? Because he's a waste of space, a waste of breath. I'm tired of hearing his name. And then what is up with the perception and reality of Tennessee fans and every other professional that calls football that thinks Tennessee's even going to struggle to make the playoffs? When yet these fans here are automatically, we got a playoff spot. Like, nothing is given in this league, and every year's a new season. So could you kind of explain that to me? Maybe I'm missing something, and I'll go back to listening. Can't wait for the next moment of the install. Hey, Lucas, looking forward to those Friday night games. All right, y'all take it easy.
Thanks, bud. Look at that. He's all right, man.
Speaking of that, this Friday, week 1 of the high school football season.
Who's doing the
It's
games?
here. Will Bowling and I are calling Ravenwood as they host East Tennessee powerhouse Alcoa Friday night.
Shouldn't we have done high school? Well, I guess next week.
No
we'll do
games
high
have
school
happened
here.
yet.
That makes sense. Our schedule gets a little. I mean, our schedule is much more defined during football season, but also, there's things that I forget about that we need to bring back. And the high school football segment is always fun, so we look forward to doing that again with Lucas on the call for some high school football games. To go back to Darrington's first point, like, has anybody said the name Caleb Farley other than us because we play the soundbite? There's been no discussion whatsoever of Caleb Farley. And by the way,
yeah, I rebuke that in the name of Jesus.
Hi, bud. It makes me laugh every time. He's not even like to say that he's a waste of space. He's on PUP, so he's really in terms of football space, he's not even taking up football space right now. He's physically unable to perform. Now, the difference between Radence, who is also on PUP, and Farley is that Radence is doing things on a football field to help him get that are getting him, or that indicate that he's closer to being back than would be Farley. Farley's injury is different than Radence's was. Radence was a torn ACL in December. Farley was another disc situation with his back that required surgery. Those are drastically different. So, when is Caleb Farley going to get? They don't have to cut him this year. There's nothing that demands that they do. He's on PUP, so he wouldn't take up a roster spot. They could Monty Rice him, right? Wasn't Monty on PUP, in-season PUP for the first 6 weeks? So they don't have to take up a roster spot with Caleb Farley until such time as they, that expires, basically. 615-737-1045 is the number. Last call for phone calls. We'll do that and some polls coming up next. Last call for phone calls, 615-737-1045 is the number. Let's get some in. How about Kyle in Springfield up next? We're talking some Titans. Hey, Kyle.
What's going on, Buck?
What you got for me?
Man, I got what I call a pretty controversial take. Probably piss off most everybody. Is Caleb Farley what happens when you go unsuccessful on a big Jeff gamble?
Yeah. I would say he's, if Jeff is an argument for taking a risk on an injured player, Farley is an argument against, but like Kyle, those are such different injuries.
Jeff was not injury plagued throughout his college career.
And Jeff had played substantially more football at the position that he was projecting to play in the pros than did Caleb Farley.
He was insanely productive. Farley dealt with that stuff his whole career.
So, Kyle, I would say that Farley is a different kind of – Farley is more of a projection as much about the player as it is about the injury risk, if that makes sense. Because if you recall, he was recruited as a wide receiver at Tech. He then changed over to corner. He played one full season of corner, then got hurt, then sat out the following season because of COVID, then went into the NFL draft.
Question.
Appreciate it. He's just a different kind. He's a different kind of reach. But other talent evaluators in the NFL were talking about him this way. It's just the Titans were the team to do it. And, whether Jeff reinforced John's decision, like it worked out for Jeff, if he's medically cleared by our staff, it'll work out for Caleb. You can understand the logic. It didn't work. We didn't talk about Peyton Manning getting a job at UT or taking a job with UT. He's going to teach.
I love Peyton Manning.
That's the class he's going to teach? That's the class, Bev?
Man.
Is it I love Peyton Manning 101?
I love Peyton Manning.
Okay.
I am so bummed this couldn't happen 6 years prior. I probably wouldn't have gotten into that. Like the mad dash that
they're going to crash the website.
They're going to crash the website signing up for that class.
People who are undecided about their college futures in the fall are going to say, okay, I'll go to Tennessee and I'll study communications just so I can take the Peyton Manning class.
Not the hardest degree in the world. You can go a few different ways: marketing, PR, broadcasting. It's a very diverse major.
So he's doing this on top of the Manning cast? Is he still going to do the Manning cast?
I hope so.
I felt that I got away from the Manning cast after the initial season, though.
A little bit, but I enjoyed what came out of it. Like, think about the stuff that them reacting live with Shannon Sharp to Nathaniel Hackett's decision-making in Seattle at the beginning of the season. Tom Brady, that was great. I mean, Nick Saban.
Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
It's the most likable and like the most I've ever seen from Russell as like a human being, not Mr. Unlimited. Right? Where he was breaking down football. He was going through situational football. It made me like Russell Wilson a hell of a lot more. And if it's a game I don't care about, I'm more inclined to flip over to the Manning cast. It's just if it's a game with stakes, I'm infinitely more likely to have the sound up with the broadcasters on because they do a good job tracking it, and you can tell that Peyton is dialed in throughout the course of these situations that arise, and that perspective is great. It's just I feel like I lose more of the actual game and get more about specific situations that the Mannings hone in on.
I love Peyton Manning.
Which is valuable. Tennessee, speaking of the University of Tennessee, UVA is who they will open up with in less than a month here at Nissan Stadium. There's some news about one of the best players, if not the best players, on Virginia's roster.
Yeah, this sucks. Edge rusher Chico Bennett, local guy out of Franklin, went to BGA, 6'4", 210, all ACC defensive end last year. If he had a big year, could be talking about the discussion of a day one pick in the NFL draft. Freak injury, I'm not going to say tearing. I don't know what the specifics of the injury are, but a freak knee injury that he sustained getting up after taking a knee following a scrimmage.
Nightmare.
To hear his head coach, Tony Elliott, talk. He took a knee like everybody else, and when he got up, they said the knee stiffened up, and it appears to be an injury that will keep him out for a period of time. It is unclear exactly what the injury is, so I'm not going to speculate, but that sucks. We don't know the timetable, but sucks for a local guy who had a big year last year, and UVA, man, does not have much coming into Nashville. I mean, I've joked with you before. I've told you that they're starting quarterback competitions between a baseball player and a transfer from Monmouth. Well, the baseball player decided he's just going to play baseball.
Smart.
So the Monmouth transfer appears to be the guy to lead Virginia. His name is Tony Muskett, which is an awesome name for a quarterback.
Yes. Not better than General Booty, but close.
So the optimism is not high for Virginia football. I wonder if that spread that was 27.5 in favor of Tennessee last we checked is going to go up.
Rapid fire polls.
I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. Because the polls have closed and the votes have been tallied. It's time for a poll update. And he's a good boy. Buck Rising show producer and correspondent, Lucas Panzica.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, who sells below MSRP on any non-specialty new Ford. We didn't even discuss this. Who has the better 2023 season? Ezekiel Elliott with the Patriots or Dalvin Cook with the Jets? 90% say Cook.
Bank it. We'll do it tomorrow.
After watching the first Titans preseason game, where is the biggest need for defensive depth? Mahogany says edge.
I disagree, but we also didn't get to that, so we'll do that tomorrow as well. Brett Kern, we did not know exactly what time Brett would be here. We had a show prepared, and then the show quickly changed because Brett was gracious enough to spend an hour with us in ways that we did not anticipate.
Which Titans player could benefit most from joint practices with the Minnesota Vikings? Kenneth says Tannehill, facing a different defense with Burks and Hopkins, especially from what we've heard about Brian Flores' defense, blitzing the holy hell out of Kirk Cousins in team drills, which I find to be hilarious.
Just absolutely peppering Kirk in practice with zero blitzes.
Like, hey, man, you want to chill out? Thomas says Fulton going up against Justin Jefferson. That would be my submission.
Jefferson against anybody in this Titans secondary is going to be fun. My answer is offensive line.
How many wide receivers do the Titans keep? 64% say 6, 36% say 5.
I'm going to say 5.
Those are the polls.
Excellent. That's the show. Prime time tonight. Leagues Cup tonight as well. You can hear Lucas on the call at 8:30. Big night for Nashville SC. I will. It sounds like I'm going to go to Geodis Park tonight, bud.
Pregame at 8 p.m. Listen on the way over.
You can do that as well as on Apple TV. Have a great rest of your afternoon. Blaine and Mickey are next.